Hello, good evening, everyone. Everybody here in attendance and watching. Today is March 31st, 2026. We're gathered here tonight in council chambers for our first budget workshop among council members. I'm going to turn it first over to the city manager, and he'll start us off for tonight.
Thank you, Your Honor. Great to see everybody here. I'm going to introduce something a little bit new, a good idea by a council member of ours actually, for the folks following along at home, we're going to show you how to navigate to the budget from our website. So this is our website page, and our marketing and communications director is going to navigate through. So if you click on, go ahead, Haley, and show everybody where to go to the budget review part. And once you click there, it will bring up our budget itself as far as all of the portions of the books that the counselors have that they're going by, and all of this information is the same that we have. So as we navigate through each department, tonight it will be the school department. We'll show that on the screen as far as what their budget looks like in our book. So, and I'm going to start off by talking about, I have a manager's message that's in every one of our budgets that kind of goes through everything. And I'm going to summarize. It's 11 pages, so I won't read it verbatim, but I'm going to summarize kind of to set the stage where we're at with our budget this year, both school and municipal and county. So if you want to take some time to read that message, that kind of goes through every department, the ups and downs, and every part of that. So that's there for you to read at any time. But moving right along, maybe to Appendix A, Haley, where I'm going to talk about the tax rate summary and kind of go through everything. So kind of the overall, as I present a manager's budget in the council, the folks who have been on the council know that I go on what the council goals and priorities are for 2026. We start that process at the beginning of the year. So as I'm putting the budget together, I'm keeping all of those priorities in mind. This year they were including attractive development through improvement of internal processes, organizational excellence and civic engagement, affordable transportation, enhancement of community spaces and community activities, and infrastructure investment and maintenance. So as I look through the budget and as we put it together, I kept those themes in mind, trying to ensure that what's in there for funding and personnel and equipment and things like that can accomplish the priorities for the council this year. So obviously when I went through, I was trying to be as conservative as possible. We did have identified two positions within our information services division that we were able to, or department that we were able to not fill this year to save some money, and looking at some other positions as well. But in order to achieve the priorities, this is where the budget I have to present to you. And obviously the hard work begins with you to kind of determine where you all want to be by the end of that. So just to kind of set the stage as to what the manager does and why, the budget presented by me is what it is. So I want to talk again about the revaluation. That is the biggest part of this budget this year that you'll see. Kind of our tax rate summary is a little bit different than it has been in years past, because our tax rate at the bottom is significantly lower. We don't usually see that go the other way, but that's because of the revaluation, correct? By law, Maine municipalities have to be a valuation of at least 70% of the value or more. We haven't had a revaluation since 2006 because we've been able to stay within those parameters. That's what's taken so long for us to get where we're at. But like almost all communities in Maine and property values in Maine, after the pandemic, coming out of that, we had this spike in property values, and we were hoping, because we've been out of it for a few years now, that they would come back down, but unfortunately, they just haven't come back to that to get us to that 70%. So by law, we were actually notified by the state that we had to enter into the revaluation process, which is done so in order to keep, fair share of taxes equal, right? So one group is not paying more than the other, and we're kind of bringing everybody together, because right now, property assessments, valuations, if you will, for residential is at 43% if we do nothing. So if you can imagine by law, it needs to be 70. They're at about 43%. And our market value for commercial is at 77%. So those are out of whack. And that's what this revaluation does, is it looks at the properties themselves. This is a statistical revaluation. They didn't go into homes. They looked at home sales. They looked at exterior portions of houses. They looked at permits that were pulled for improvements and things like that. So that's kind of what went into this process, and they have completed the residential portion and are into the commercial portion right now. So when I talk about numbers moving forward, normally I'd be able to kind of give a real succinct, like this is what the average home will look like as far as an increase. But this year it'll be a little different. I'm going to give ranges because it can vary, and it's really not going to be known the exact number or valuation, if you will, until late July. So it's after, presumably, the budget's passed. So this is not anything new to fiscal year budgets. We operate in these kind of areas, if you will, where we're estimating, and we're estimating conservative, right? We don't want to go too far one way. So when you hear me talking and I'm asked questions, it'll be kind of a range. It'll be a close range. I'm not just going to go 0 to 100, but it won't be that. Like last year, if you remember, if you look at the tax rate sheet, the average home, excuse me, in Augusta was, the valuation was $135,000, almost $136,000. That same home from the revaluation is like between $265,000 and $280,000. So that's how much the value of that home has increased, and that's kind of the kind of the in-between, if you will. So, and we'll know that exact number, like I said, in July when that's set. The other part to that is the exemptions. That's the good news on homes right now at 43%. If you qualify for a homestead exemption, it's your primary residence. Everybody does. They would get at 100% valuation. You would get $25,000 off, or the first $25,000 wouldn't go towards your valuation. Right now, because we're so low, folks are only getting about $14,000 and change off that first portion. So that's going to go back up when we do these. Even if our valuation comes up at 90%. And not 100%, we can still capture that full $25,000. So that's something that's working in our favor. The mill rate, if you will, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the tax rate sheet, but currently our mill rate is at 24.4, and you'll see that through the manager's budgets that's proposed, and that's the important part. I actually had to change the cover a little bit on this budget book, because it's not the fiscal year 2027 budget, it's the manager's proposed budget. So this will change. I've never seen it stay the same when we start today and we end. So, but the tax rate, if you will, from last year to this year right now has gone from 24.4 to 17.2 or 17.3. So that's that whole equation of we don't keep the mill rate the same and collect extra money. We bring that back down to collect exactly what we need to based upon what we have, what we're looking to raise in order to set the rate, if you will. So going through the tax rate sheet, you will find that this year the municipal budget is up $2 million for expenditures, is up $2,508,029, or 5.4% over last year, going from $46,823,670 to $49,331,699. The lion's share of that increase for the municipal side has to do with our contractual obligations for pay, fringe, health insurance, all of those things that go in. 80% of our workforce is unionized. Those contracts have been negotiated, as well as increases in utilities. Operating costs are all up. We didn't see reductions in anything in order to maintain equipment, supplies, things like that. So that's all driving our increases from last year to this year. The school department is up $3,750,512, or 9%, which is last year was $41,259,807. Up to 45,000, excuse me, 45 million, I wish 45,000, 45,010,319. And the superintendent and the school board, I don't want to take too much of what they're going to explain, but their increases from their message is their labor costs like ours, but special education, English as a second language, and student transportation are some of their largest drivers and the reasons for their increase. On the revenue side, you'll see that the city is significantly down in revenue, and that is absolutely primarily because of what we used last year in fund balance. Last year, if you recall, I proposed initially the 5 million, a little over 5 million in fund balance. We did have some extra fund balance, but that's kind of one-time money when you use it that way. And we determined by the end, in order to keep that tax rate low, to use a couple more million at that time. So what that's done for us this year, and we were hoping for better times, right? We were hoping for more fund balance in both municipal and education, or revenues coming up, and hoping for this year to be different. So what has happened on the city side is not only do we not have that extra, but I can't propose the same amount. I'm proposing $1 million less than the original, so it's 4.8 million in fund balance instead of 5.8, which is what I originally proposed last year, just because looking at where we're coming in this year and our overall fund balance, that looking at keeping those levels to where we want to be. Remember, the charter suggests that we keep it between 8.33 and 5%. This gets us in the range of 7.24 using the fund balance that I proposed. So there is some wiggle room, if you will, one way or the other, but it gets us within that range. And responsibly, that's what I feel I should be proposing. But it puts us in, obviously, looking at our revenues, it looks like we're really down a lot, but it's the fund balance aspect of it. Because if you take $3 million, we're about 400,000 beyond where we were. So we're only down 2.599353 in revenues, and that's primarily, like I said, when you go through our revenues, it's the fund balance not being there. The school side, they are actually up in their revenues from last year. Last year, they had $22,390,337, and they're up this year to $22,903,666, or $513,329, or a 2.3% increase. So there was some addition on their side compared to where they were last year. And then this is the most important part, the needs from taxes that we have as far as the numbers compared to this year and last year. And I'll back up just a little bit on the revenue side. The other part from the city is our investment income, excise tax, tax increment financing, EMS call revenue, and the steady stream of aid from the state, if you will, revenue sharing, is what's keeping us a little bit better than we were last year. Revenue sharing is down like $300,000, but it's still steady, and those are estimates at this time. So that's what's kind of helped us to offset a bit of this, if you will. And now needs from taxes, on the municipal side, we're up because when you take expenditures being up and revenues being down, we're up $5,107,382, or 26%. On the school side, they're at $3,237,183, or 17%, and the county is up $348,856, or 11%. And I should have mentioned them earlier in the expenditures as well. So the county's coming in about $350,000 more than they were last year. So they're up about 11%. When you look at the valuation, that number there, it's divided by 1,000. So we've gone from last year, our budgeted valuation was about 1.7 billion. We're up to about 2.9 billion in the added valuation based on property values and things like that, or an additional 1.2 billion, or 70%, which is why the tax rate looks so reduced or low, is because when you do that mathematical equation, that's reduced, and keeping that's what's needed, the tax rate to be set at in order to raise the proper number of appropriations, if you will. The only thing I would add is our Hatch Hill Child Care and Civic Center, Central Garage. Those are our enterprise funds and our inner service fund in Central Garage. You'll see when we go through that budget as well, they, all of them except for Hatch Hill, are not seeing the return to put money back into the general fund. Childcare was down a bit this year. They're going to have to raise their costs in order to balance their budget for this year. Civic Center, as you know, they do good business, but they're bogged down with repairs, and that all goes into their bottom line. And Central Garage is about breaking even. So we're looking at increasing their rates as well in order to have a bit of a fund balance with them too. So I think I'll stop there because that's kind of the overall, as I indicated. There is a very detailed description of what I just talked about at the beginning of the budget, if anybody wants to take a look at that and read through that. So I think, Your Honor, that sets the stage. Our first.
So let me open it up, see if any questions are from councilors at this point after the manager's presentation. Councilor Jenkins.
Thank you, sir. So I'm to understand that the new mill rate, 17.29, is what is needed to balance our budget with the projected expenses.
Correct.
Now, if, or as we reduce projected expenses, that mill rate, in fact, will also drop.
The mill rate will drop, and also, if I may, if there's added valuation, which we're still working on that mill rate will drop as well.
Okay. One key number that was important to me throughout budget deliberations last year was to understand how many hundreds of thousands of dollars represents a 1% increase in taxes. Do we have that number this year?
Yeah, it's still at about that $1 million that gets you that 1%. But again, using that 265,000 to 270 or 280,000 will vary within that slightly. But I'll be prepared as we work through this to have that range. So when we plug in numbers that change, I can tell you what that decrease is. We'll manipulate that sheet for you so you know exactly.
Very much appreciated.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So one thing I wanted to clarify during your remarks, when we were talking about the revaluation, we were talking about ratios, 70%, 47%, or whatever. The ratio is assessed value to fair market value. So that's I think probably everybody understands is kind of implicit, but to make it express when we're saying that, today's valuation in Augusta is 46% of what fair market value today would reflect.
That's correct.
Right. And before I turn it over to the school department, the only remarks I want to make is something I say every year, and that is where we start is never where we end up. So we're just getting started. So with that, our first department is the school department, and we invite representatives of the school department to join us at the table. And besides the superintendent and the school board chair and the business manager, we have other members of the school board with us tonight, as well as the assistant superintendent and other administrators. So we've got a good turnout tonight. Madam Chair?
Yes,
Superintendent?
just to kick this off, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the work that we've done with you. We have some new school board members, and for clarification, do you want to just explain briefly how this goes? And what I mean by that is this our only opportunity to defend the budget to you or describe our budget to you? Will there be another opportunity? So just trying to anticipate those kind of questions.
So we haven't scheduled another session with the school department, but if past experience is any guide, we have had you back later on in the process as our thinking and our figures get a little bit better. So we would happy to do that again. But make a good pitch on your first try, too.
We'll do our best.
Okay.
I'm going to let Superintendent Tracy share the details of this with you, but it was with a lot of angst that we went over this budget. We had a lot of concerns with the number of cuts that we were required to make to get this budget down to where it is now. So I know that 9% sounds like a lot, and we agree it sounds like a lot, but we think we can explain to you why we needed to do what we did, and hopefully that will help. And I'm going to not take a lot of your time and turn it over to the detail man, Mr. Superintendent Tracy, and I'll let you kick that off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mayor, honorable members of the council, good evening. I'm Mike Tracy, the Superintendent of Schools, and our wonderful new business manager, Janine Ross, is with you this evening. And just to acquaint you with a couple of things, I've handed out the budget to you, and I translated it from educationese into cityese. And what I mean by that is, last year I brought forward our budget in the legal format that we have to present it in, with 11 cost centers and the educational departments. And then when we provide the information to the city manager, we translate that into how you look at it. So tonight, I'm going to do my best to present these documents, which are how you look at the budget, which is the school department budget in this format, as well as the revenue sheet projected for 27, okay? So that would be where we'll talk from. I won't spend a lot of time tonight, although I think it's important to note there are 4 major cost drivers or changes in the school department budget this year. I've been saying them right along, and there's no getting around sort of these needs. So the first area continues to be a volatile area is special education. We can get into those details as you wish. Transportation, part of that is a contractual obligation we have with First Student, but it also includes special education transportation, as well as the third area is the English language learner or our multilingual department. Our immigrant population in Augusta that we serve has grown exponentially, and we have willingly worked with the city to really assume more of paying our fair share of the IT department costs. So we're assuming some more of those in this budget, as well as a staff member that is being cut from the city side, being added to the school side. Those are the 4 areas really that pertain to the most costly areas of our budget. On top of your collective bargaining increases in reference to salaries, benefits, we've included a 15% increase on health insurances and insurances. What else am I forgetting that are, I was the business manager last year and really had not accounted for how much we spend in tuition reimbursement and substitute costs. We thought Again, we would nickel and dime last year's budget, get it down to as least as we could, and we found this year we didn't have enough for tuition reimbursement and substitute teachers, so we've had to drastically increase those areas. Any other areas that would be noted for these folks to pay
No,
attention to?
I think that's good summation.
So I'll stop right there and answer questions on those 4 areas.
Yes, Haley?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any questions so far on those drivers that the superintendent has talked about?
Just for clarification, when you said tuition reimbursement, well, that was for staff, not
Staff.
for students?
Staff tuition reimbursement per the contract there.
Go ahead.
Continue? Okay. So as the city manager mentioned, the overall budget is up approximately $3.7 million. Now, when the budget was put together, and I'll spare you those details, but we have a similar process of department heads coming forward, presenting a budget to me. And when it came to me originally, it was up $5.5 million. And so I went back through that budget with the business manager, and we reduced that back to, okay, if we don't add the positions that the department heads, the principals, et cetera, feel we need, and we go with what we think is status quo type budget, we were at 4.3 million. And so the administrators met, and we had reduced the budget down to where we're at now with the school board's help. We had worked through a process of eliminating some positions, and working with the school board, they felt maybe my work was a little too excessive. And we have, at this point, eliminated 3 positions. Net gain is 3 positions reduced over this year. I think it's worth saying that in the last 2 years, we've reduced 24 positions in school department. We are trying to be as mindful as possible with the folks that have to pay the bills in this town and the needs of the schools and the staff. We've worked really hard this year to bring back a number of students from out of district, and we're pleased to be able to do that. We want to be able to educate Augusta kids in Augusta, but that has not been at the without expense of staff injury. And I think that's worth knowing, that we've had more staff injuries this year than I've seen in the past 4 years that I've been in Augusta. So the net increase to the expense side is 3.7 million. We have not very much fund balance, which I think you should be pleased that we're running a budget that's pretty close to, like, we present a budget, we run the budget out, it's pretty dang close to what we told you we needed. That's good budgeting. But that problem with that is then we don't bring in a lot of money at the end of the year. Okay? So we have added $378,000 to the fund balance forward to apply towards reducing taxes in the FY27 budget. I am not pleased that the state subsidy portion is down $65,000. So as I tell everybody, we're running through June 30. And if we were doing nothing different, right, if we had this budget this year and moving from June 30 to July 1st, we'd be operating with $65,000 less. So that gives you the overall expenses and revenues. And before you, you can take a peek at this sheet. I'll just bring you right down through this quickly. And you'll notice the Board of Education line is up about $20,000. We've added a little bit to legal. That's pretty much what that expense is there. The superintendent's office is namely, there are no new positions in that office. However, we have our typical expenses of salary benefit increases, and I think there's some contracted,
Center.
the service center. The regional service center amount was We joined a regional service center that cost the district about $29,000, but in the ED 279, we have a windfall of about 100 and, can you give me that specific? I think it's about 105 or 110,000. And what that regional service center does is allows us to work collaboratively with Gardner, Richmond, et cetera, to collaborate on things like some athletic programs, co-op programs, some professional development activities, and we're working on some special education collaboration. I'll just lump them all together. The schools are all up between 200 and 300,000, and all of that is namely the things I've outlined to you already as cost drivers beyond salary and benefit increases. So those 4 cost drivers are embedded in each one of those school costs. The capital area technical center's up just under 300,000. System-wide administration, I'm going to end with that in a second. Special education's up about 300,000. Debt service is down. The one thing that's down is the payment on Coney, and that's what that resembles there. System-wide administration, it says 1.2 million. That increase, almost 900,000 of that is special education, transportation, and the IT increase. Okay, I've thrown a lot at you folks. I guess I'll stop right here. Mr. Mayor, I'll entertain questions.
Yes, sir. Counselor Lynn?
Mike, you mentioned reduction in personnel. I just want to make sure I have the current information. And by the way, thank you for answering my questions. In FY '24, at the end of that year, you had 462 employees, and you're projecting 415. Is that correct? So I show a reduction of 47. I mean, it can change any given day, but
I'm going to find that.
Two.
Yeah, 2? She's got me all.
I just want to make sure that hasn't changed.
Those numbers haven't changed, Mr.
Okay,
Lynn.
no. FY '24, 462, FY '25, 439, currently 418, projected 415.
Yes.
That's what I had.
Yes, sir.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Michu?
Curious, I thought the state was mandated to pay 55% of the cost of schools.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Now,
Go ahead.
I have FY '27 as the taxpayers are paying 60% and the state is paying 40%. That seems not even close to 55%. So, do you have an explanation that we could understand?
So in the recent weeks, I have testified for a bill called LD 2226. And that bill more accurately reflects actual costs in public education in Maine. And actually, if the money were there and if the funding models were accurate with this new bill, it would pump like $55 million into the state for educational purposes, getting us closer to that real 55%. I don't mind going on record and saying, and it's public, it's this public information, and I've as brazen as saying, I think the funding formula is a fairy tale. I don't believe the ED 279 represents current real costs in public education whatsoever. Not even close, really. So there's no wonder when we say this is what we're really dealing with, the actual costs in our schools and what it costs to fund them. And I think you heard me talk about this last year, that having an accurate, that was a conversation around fund balance. When we pump $1 or $2 or $3 million of fund balance into the budget, then you're telling the local taxpayers that everybody thinks that the cost of education is $3 million less when you use $3 million of fund balance. And it's not that people aren't being truthful, it's just, it's a fictitious amount of education costs. So, for example, in the funding formula, it's not yet, it's rated on an average teacher's cost of teacher salary in Maine. So if we're getting an average Maine teacher salary might be 40,000 or 45,000, excuse me. And we might be starting our salaries at 47,000 in Augusta. And we're not getting that real cost per teacher, for example. And then the formula may formulate out that you need less teachers than you really need. So the formula might say you need 47 teachers at Coney High School, but really to operate, we need 57. So they pay us what you just said, Mr. Mishu, on an aggregate of the total cost of the teacher. So they're paying us 55% of that, of 55 teachers, and we really need 65 teachers. So we have 65 teachers, and these aren't real numbers, but Augusta's paying the difference between what the state pays per teacher, and then you're picking up the other 10 teachers on your dime here in Augusta. And that I could show you those kinds of examples throughout the funding formula. We have deans of students that are needed in our schools because we don't have assistant principals, for example. Or we believe in our school, for example, our school department, I could go off on this all day, that the state says you only need 2.5 nurses. I don't know how you get a half a nurse, but the state says you need 2.5 nurses. Well, we have a nurse in every school because we have feeding tubes and we have some significant needs of kids in our schools that we need a nurse in every school. And so Augusta's paying for 2.5 more nurses. And I can show you that, again, throughout the whole funding formula. So the real cost of education in Augusta and across the state is not fairly represented by the current model of state funding. So your point of, wait a second, I thought the state was picking up 55% is not really true because they're picking up 55% of some cost, but not the real cost.
So they're picking up 55% of what they determine is 55% of what your budget should be.
Correct. Yep.
And just again, I'm crunching some numbers here. Since FY 2024 to the proposed budget for FY 2027 shows a 37% increase in the ask to the taxpayers just from the school department, 37%. And again, we'll go back to the state. They're giving 9% more than they did aggregately over the last few years. So, 37% over a 5-year period is a pretty significant amount. And I'm thinking that next year isn't going to be any easier than this year. So just doing some observations here, and I'll maybe have some more remarks later. Thank you.
Councilor Gary Allen.
Thank you. This is a yes or no question on purpose. Is it accurate to say that when Governor Mills or other people state that the state is paying 55% of the cost of education, that is inaccurate? You don't have to answer that question.
Thank you.
I will answer that question. I hear you saying that when I hear that for moving forward, and I hear that the state legislature is paying 55% of the cost of education for the city of Augusta and across the state, that is an inaccurate statement, and I will no longer believe it. So thank you for clarifying that for me tonight. I think I just had a really big revolution about the fact that I feel like I've been lied to for the last 3 or 5 years. And you do not have to respond to that. Thank you.
Councilor Sinkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, school board members, business manager, Superintendent Tracy, for being here tonight. I was able to watch all of your budget meetings, and I just first of all want to say thank you to the staff of the schools and your office for bringing forward a responsible budget, and then the school board for working so hard to find the balance and really taking into consideration the needs of the kids in Augusta. That was a lot of really hard work. It's not fun, and this brought us to tonight. I also need to commend your staff because there was a very real narrative of, yes, these cuts are going to impact us and we will figure it out, because we always have to figure it out because the kids are what's important. And I think that speaks to the quality of the staff we have in the city of Augusta. They shouldn't have to figure it out, and because they care about their jobs, they do. So I want to put that on the record. Superintendent Tracy, thank you for the last minute phone call today when I had some questions. I appreciate it. One of the things that we talked about, anytime that I'm looking at a budget sheet and I see the previous year's adopted numbers and then the projected numbers out, and then this year's proposed numbers, when it looks like we're not going to expend all the funds that have been allocated, and then we're projecting higher numbers in that next year, my question is always why? If we're not spending everything this year, why are we expecting higher prices the next year? And I think you've touched on this, but I just want to say it further, like as specifically as possible. On the phone, we talked about salaries, insurance, and I think you're also talking about the cost drivers, and I'll
Yeah,
give it to you.
thanks for asking that again. The four cost drivers that I've noted: salary, benefits, the tuition, subs. I want to be careful to say that we've done some, preliminary, where do we think we're going to end this year? We're uncomfortable saying it's going to be more than $1 million, somewhere between $0 and $1 million. In fact, I told Mr. Manager, I think we're doing really well until we've had a few expenses and some legal expenses recently. The business manager and I just met earlier today about some areas where we're worried, where we're ending the year with a couple of our cost centers headed over, like in the past. So we are going to have to make some decisions between now and the end of the year to curb those things into the black. Now, that being said, again, we're not, perhaps, again, I don't want to be hyperbole here, perhaps in the past, other people might have had a school budget that had more in it than they needed. That's not how we're operating. I want to be crystal clear about that. We are telling you what we need. My administrative team can vouch for this. When we met and I said, we need to cut something and bring a reasonable budget to the board and allow the board to bring a reasonable budget forward to the city council, we trimmed almost $1 million from that originally proposed budget. And so that's approximately what you're looking at tonight. So to answer your question directly, there won't be, from what we're adopting and what we're bringing in at the end of this year, it's not going to be a huge carryover fund balance number. And what we are proposing are the real increases that we believe we need.
Thank you. One of the questions that I forgot to ask, when we're looking at, I guess this sheet looks a little different than this sheet, so maybe I'm asking a question that's going to confuse. Some of the things that are listed on the revenue side are tuitions, and we have them here broken out into regular tuition, state agency tuition, and tuition special education service. Can you remind me what those revenues are?
I'll let the business manager talk about those.
Sure. So regular tuition would be, for example, if a student were attending Coney High School. So they may not be a resident of Augusta. They're coming from another community and attending our high school. That's like a regular tuition. So that's where those revenues are coming from. Special education would, again, be a student that is not living in Augusta, but coming from that is in a special education area. And we also get the same thing for the technical center. We get students attending the technical center that are not a resident of Augusta. So that's where those revenues come from.
Great. Is that the state agency component? Is that the technical center?
The state agency, I'm not sure.
Is that you?
State agency client, students who are in the process.
Okay. And so in all of those, it looks like we are expecting higher or either flatlined or higher tuitions for the next year. So there will be more students or higher tuition.
We are anticipating, based on the amount of students that we had this year compared to last year, that there may be a higher amount of students coming. And we're hoping to add a bus route to.
We're running a bus run to the Vassalboro Community School, Windsor, Whitefield, and Chelsea, beginning next year for high school tuition students.
Oh, that's
So we used to do that many years ago, and we've decided to begin that process again in hopes to have a few more students come to Coney.
I will forgive you for saying when I went to high school was many years ago, because I do remember that bus route. Although I unfortunately was not one of the students that came to Coney. The half-hour drive from Palermo was a little too far. I would just, again, want to thank you for bringing forward a budget that really takes into account the various needs. I have 2 students at Lincoln Elementary. I'm there at least once a week for parent-teacher club organization activities. And in the past, usually those funds were spent on things that happened outside of school hours, like the community events that the schools put on, all of these really wonderful things. We're starting to get some requests from teachers for things during school hours that are extras. This week, there was a teacher that requested some like sensory calming things because they are saying, we still have needs and there's a budget freeze. And so I think the reality of the situation is you are bringing forward as low a budget as you can, because the teachers are saying either they're buying it out of their own pocket, or I'm glad when they come to the PTC to say, our kids could use something. Can you fund this? Because we can, and the parents can pool together and make that happen. But I had not seen that in the years prior, and we're starting to see it now. So just an anecdote about where we're at. And also, again, I think this is a very important, I'm glad we start with this budget because it's a very important component of our budget. It's our largest department and it's our kids. So I am interested to see where we go. I'm hoping where we end up is not where we start this year, but I don't have much in terms of questions because this is the price of education in Augusta. Thank you.
Council Morris Polly.
Thank you. Good to see you guys. I have some kind of follow-up questions from where we were last year to see where we're at this year. Last year, I know that you guys had expressed we were down 110 students in enrollment in the past 3 years, and last year we were down 36 students in enrollment. How many students were we down this year in enrollment, or are we up in enrollment?
Yeah, I can't remember if I gave you how many students we get funded on. So off the top of my head, I can tell you from ED 279 year to this year, we're down 42 students. And so that's a 2-year average based on the ED 279 funding formula. Do we have specific, Shelby or Janine, do you know off the top of your head, October 1st enrollment from this year to last year? No. We're down. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to give you 42 because that's the number I know, the number that we're funded on. So yes, we're down in students. I don't know if that answers that question.
Yep, that does. Last year, you had mentioned moving PT speech evaluators from entitlement over the general operating funds so that you could bill them. Did we make that move, and are we billing for those services?
Yes. Yes.
And so when we look at the revenue, it would be projected in there for underneath special education. Where would that revenue actually be? Medicaid reimbursement, correct?
Correct.
So it looks like that is down, though. So we moved it over, but Medicaid reimbursement went down?
50,000 increase.
Proposed. Right.
Maybe we're not looking at the same sheet.
Oh, it does say 50,000. Okay.
100,000 last year to 150 this year.
All right. And so have we initiated any way of becoming licensed in any way to provide more Medicaid services, Section 65 or Section 28?
Assistant Superintendent Thibodeau. Yeah, that's okay.
As part of the Regional Services Center, we started looking at doing a special purpose program and then looking at how to bill Section 24 and Section 65. But due to the climate at the federal level, the regional superintendents were reluctant to bill main care any more than we already were. Because of the liability, nobody wanted to hold the liability of it. The other part is the rate at what a public place can get versus a private entity for main care reimbursement is different. And we can't get as much as what we'd like, such as a place such as the Children's Center or a special purpose program versus one that we have within this district. We have taken the steps to move all ed techs to Ed Tech 3s, which would be able to do the behavioral health professional certification, which is 90 college credits, so that's been in place. But again, it's looking at space in our buildings to be able to do it. And then as far as what's going on at the federal level for Section 24 and 65 and the holding that liability.
For Section 28, correct?
28.
Okay.
65.
Right, and I understand that, the 65, okay, doesn't have that level of liability, I don't believe at this time. So we haven't made any strides to bring in any revenue in that area or provide that service so that we can bring some of our special education students back to the district?
We have brought back 4 students from a special purpose program. As part of what happened was that one year when we had a number of students who hadn't received services for birth to 5 and needed to have a day treatment setting, so they were able to be in that day treatment setting until the 2nd grade. Those students are now coming back into district. There was a total of 9 students. We've had 4 come back, and we're looking at 2 more by the end of this year to reduce that. As far as creating a day treatment setting within our own buildings, again, it's that space issue. However, we have created a pseudo day treatment setting.
I don't want to leave you thinking we haven't made strides.
Right.
We haven't made efforts. The reason we've joined the Regional Service Center was to work on, in fact, I had Assistant Superintendent Thibodeau present a few weeks ago to this group about, don't you think it's a great idea? In fact, we could look for a spot in Augusta to have a regionalized program, and we couldn't garner the support from them to be able to do something. And starting a multi-million-dollar program ourselves is just not
It's not feasible.
something that we're able to do at this time. So we've looked at that. We were looking at the Spellers program last year. I don't know if you remember the conversation about that, which was the augmented communication. We were set to train a number of our staff, but state funds fell through for that. That didn't come
We
through.
no longer funded it.
So we were not able to do the training that we were going to do for that. So we're trying, but we've hit dead end after dead end, I guess is the short answer. But to the extent that we can train our staff locally and begin to bring kids back, that's something we've been able to do and are doing. But to start our own program full-blown is not something we've been able to do this year.
It'd be a 1.2 million to 1.4 million startup. So that's why we're hoping to share it with other districts, but not everybody was so excited about that plan.
That seems like a really high price to start up a program that I'm not familiar that it would cost quite that much. Just from experience and having developed those programs, that cost seems a little high. So,
I can share it with you.
okay. The other thing too is when we talk about out-of-district placement, and maybe I'm remembering this incorrectly, but we pay in advance for out-of-district placement. So if you have somebody you're placing out of district, you don't pay monthly, you pay, was it 210 days at a time for out of district? Does that sound familiar?
No.
Okay, I had that in my
You
notes.
do it, the contract is for 208 days that a student attends. The daily rate is set by the placement. So it can be $260 per day or up to $360 per day, depending on where that student is placed and what program they're placed in. But you have to budget for the, I think where your thing is that you have to budget for the year, because whether the student attends or not, you still have to pay for that day.
Right, so that's where my question was going, is that, do we know that our out-of-district individuals are attending all of those days, and do we have a policy of reviewing as to whether or not they're attending all of those days?
Yes, so part of the process is when a student is not attending, much like if they were not here attending in district, you would hold what we call a manifestation determination meeting, which would look at what their absentee difficulties could be. And then if they're not accessing that placement, we've been bringing them back. And we haven't had many students that don't. I think there's one student that we had that was not accessing the program, so we're not going to pay for a day treatment program if they're not attending.
All right, thank you. Just making sure we had a process for that,
Oh,
because
yeah.
FAPE can no longer apply if we're looking at that. All right. The English as a second language. Is that counting as the 2 years of a second language for the kids that are learning English? Or do they then have to be required to take French or German? Or is that counting as their 2-year second language credits?
We would change that.
No, they still take a language in 8th grade. They get a high school credit.
But are they having to, for anybody at home, are multilingual students required to take 2 years of a foreign language?
They're required to take 1 year in 8th grade. It's
Required to take
the Unified Arts Program.
1 year in 8th grade as part of the Unified
High
Arts
school
program.
credit for it.
Okay. Last question, probably not special ed related, but child development services and the unfunded mandate to bring those kids back to the municipality as an expense. Can you explain a little bit about where we're at with that, where that's fitting into the budget? And are we bringing those kids back into the district, or are they continuing to attend SKCDC and we've initiated a contract that we're paying for?
Go ahead and start.
So what we've done is not join any of the cohorts. So CDS has the cohort of 1, 2, 3, and 4. We are waiting until it becomes actually state mandated for that. What we've done instead is contracted services for CDS. So we become almost like a vendor for CDS. So if we provide a student who attends our 4-year-old program, occupational therapy or speech therapy, or if they needed ed tech support, we are then billing CDS for that service. So it's, instead of being responsible for the 100+ students and providing FAPE for them, instead, we're taking the students that were actually attending in our buildings and then billing for those services out at this time. So I'm working with the YMCA. I have a meeting with the YMCA. I have a meeting with SKCDC to talk about creating a partnership for when we are ready to take on for FAPE for the 3 to 5-year-olds.
Is your question, are we preparing for when we have to assume 3 and 4-year-old FAPE?
Yes.
So in 2028, we will assume that responsibility. So not this coming school year, but the following school year, I believe. And at that time, we will be obligated to provide the special education services for 3 and 4-year-olds in Augusta's children, when that is converted to our responsibility. So yes, that's coming, and yes, that is an unfunded mandate. Now, when we open the new Farrington Elementary School, the school board has said that they would like to, like we have a preschool program, universal preschool for 4-year-olds, we're going to extend that to 3-year-olds at that time. So in and around 2028, 2029, or shortly thereafter when we open the new Farrington, we'll be looking at a model that has a universal preschool. So we'll have education and providing special education services to 3 and 4-year-olds at that time.
So will we be expecting another increase in our special education budget when that happens?
You could. Yes, you could. Yep.
Last is, can we get a copy of the mid-year academic review? I know we got one from last year, but I did not get one this year.
For this year.
Yeah.
Should be on our website as well.
Oh, that's helpful. Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Lilly?
Thank you. Do we have an idea of how many students we're expected to have for next year?
We are anticipating right around 2,000.
Do we have an idea of how many of those will be coming from out of district?
I can't give you a specific number. We have, do you know off the top of your head how many tuition students we have?
64?
64 currently tuition students, and we're anticipating slightly more than that.
And you're able to, that's what we get for the reimbursements from the other districts?
Yeah, under the tuition
Yeah.
revenue, yes, sir.
I think you had spoke about some of the numbers. Who sets those numbers? The per student in the so many hours, where does that number come from?
The tuition, sorry, the tuition figures. So we get those from the state. So the state publishes those usually around December, and we go right to the state website and obtain those tuition numbers.
So in December, we get them for this upcoming calendar year or school year.
Yeah, for the current, so for example, this school year, we didn't get the tuition rates till December. So
Okay.
then we bill at that time.
Understood. So, okay, and how many students do we have out of district or expecting to be out of district?
You need for special education services?
Any of them?
We don't tuition regular ed students out, special ed.
For special education, generally are between 18 and 20.
18 and 20? Thank you.
So, Jackins?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of quick questions. Absentee rate, where does that stand right now?
As far as
Your absentee rate for Augusta schools?
we are, there are 2 different rates. There's a chronic absenteeism rate, which is the total amount of absences regardless of excused or not excused. I don't know that number off the top of my head. Do you?
It
Chronic.
changes, but I think we're around 32% right now.
Okay.
What was that number?
It fluctuates anywhere between 29 and 32%.
Is that higher and lower than last year?
It's about the same.
About the same?
What happens is for chronic absenteeism, it is, so if there's 180 days in school, if a student misses 18 days of school regardless of reason, then they're considered chronically absent. So if we're at the 100th day of school and a student has missed 10 days of school for any reason, they're considered chronically absent.
So about a third of our student population is considered chronically absent.
That's correct.
But it's, parents could be taking kids on vacations, it could be whatever, for whatever reason.
Any reason.
Dropout rate, where are we at this year compared to last?
Dropout? I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's more the graduation rate.
Yeah.
That we would look at because the dropout rate is not, it doesn't calculate the same way as it has in the past. So now its graduation rate is around 77%.
Okay, so,
And we have fluctuated up and down. Right now, we're down, but we were, I don't need to stay up here. I'm planning to go right back. But so we go up and down somewhere around 80 to 80, 82, 77, back and forth.
Between 77 to 82.
Yep.
And students who graduate in that 5th year, or even after 4.5 years, would not be calculated into that rate. It's students who complete high school within the 4 years.
okay, so we still have about a quarter of the student population that's not making it through. Is that higher or lower than last year?
It's a little bit lower this year.
Oh, that's good.
No, lower as in.
Oh, lower,
graduation
okay,
rate is lower.
so that's bad.
Not good.
Okay, all right.
But it's like, one of the challenges is that with our multilingual population, they're coming in and are at a credit deficit. So it wouldn't be surprising that our number would be less because they have to potentially transfer to the adult ed program, and they would be considered a dropout by doing that. Because maybe they came in with either no credits because they are coming in from a different country and may or may not have credits, or, they're coming from different schools, Michigan, Georgia, and when they come, they also could be at a credit deficit. So it's not surprising. It's something that we have to continue to work hard at to make sure students are gaining skills in that area. One thing that we've been looking at as well.
I just wanted to know the numbers.
Oh, sorry.
I need to know.
Hey, I could talk about this for a long time.
I could tell.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Lizzo.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
Sorry.
And test scores. I know we've talked a lot in the last on test scores. How was the most recent test score and compared to the last test score? How are we
Well,
holding up?
Ms. Morris Polly just asked for the mid-year report as recent as mid-year, which examines the fall scores. So,
Have you read it?
yeah,
Okay, so what are can you summarize?
the summary would be, we're up about 1 to 2% in both reading and math
Okay.
across the district.
How does that compare to statewide and countrywide?
We are just under state averages in a couple of grade levels and about average in most of our grade levels.
In three grade levels. It's like grade 9, but the rest of them are at grade level. I mean, at state average.
State average, what about national average?
The national one is difficult to compare because they use the NAEP, and so they chose fourth and eighth, and out of the 160 students that are in the eighth grade, or roughly, they chose 50 students to take the test.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Counselor Mission.
Now, I think I heard ESL students, approximately 260 in the district. Does that sound about right? How long, when did we start seeing them come to Augusta? I'm just trying to, because if we didn't have them, the student population would be somewhere below 1,750 if my math
Yes.
failed me. Questions. Do these folks find Augusta, or does Augusta find, how are the ESL folks?
I don't really think we can answer that. Counselor Mishu, I don't think we can answer how people come to Augusta. I don't think it's appropriate for me to answer that.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to figure out is 258 seems like a lot, and it doesn't seem like, I don't know if this is federal, state, or the local is picking up the burden of educating these students, and they come, they come with extra needs because they have to learn to speak the language, and that resonates to reading, writing, and arithmetic. So that,
Yes, sir.
the point I'm trying to make, to me, it seems like it's a very giant burden to.
Well, to you, it might be a burden. I think,
But I don't want to, let me, I don't want to say.
Responsibility.
Responsibility, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
yeah, the immigrant population in Augusta that, and you've heard me for 4 years talk about how the schools are a microcosm of your city. And we provide services like you have to provide your constituents. We provide those to the students. And yes, we could say the same thing about various departments where we provide services to our students. And so, yes, I think what you might be saying is that the need in the multilingual department has grown at an exponential rate. Just in my 4 years, when I got here, I believe there were right around 70 multilingual students 4 or 5 years ago. And here I am headed into year 5 next year with almost 300 students. So to your point, that need has exponentially grown and the need for that service. But again, we have to provide it. We've got caseload requirements from the state, just like Ms. Polly was just saying about 3-year-olds. There are going to be these things that aren't they're not my fault or anybody here's fault. It's like we've got to take care of it. So,
But like you said,
Yes.
the point I'm trying to make is 300 students, the responsibility of educating them is, it's, again, I got to watch what I say because I'm just trying to, why isn't there more
Yeah.
federal or state aid to provide for helping educate these students?
The ED 279, where we get our funding from the state, allocates additional monies, around $800,000 to our district to support ESOL learning in our district. That doesn't cover the cost of that entire department. So that seems to be the conundrum which we started the night with, telling me about the ED 279 funding formula argument about how that is insufficient. There's insufficient state funding for that need.
Is that 800,000 included in this 17.6, or is that?
It's
That's included in that?
total revenue, yes, sir.
So if you take roughly 300 students and 500, it doesn't add up, because I figure that it's about $22,000 a year to educate a child in Augusta. And somehow the math falls off the cliff there, but I'm just trying to understand all of that, so
Yes, sir.
thank you very much.
Councilor Gary Allen.
I think I hear Counselor Michoud saying that we all really want to provide really excellent education to every citizen of Augusta, and the state of Maine should pay 55% of that education actual cost.
I just want to be careful. May I comment, Mr. Mayor? I'm not saying the funding formula has always been bad. I'm just saying it's bad now. And the problem is we're funded based on an aggregate income level in Augusta. And it's, for example, we're actually receiving 5% of the 100% of funds we're supposed to get. We receive 5% less because the folks in Augusta evidently make more money than the state average. So the funding formula is paid out based on the average income of Mainers.
Based on
And-
2006.
And the formula hasn't been updated in any real way since its inception in 2006. So for, the things I've been advocating at the State House were like, hey, maybe, put a 5-year requirement, like every 5 years, this needs to be updated, because then you might see a more accurate reflection of getting funds at the 55% level.
The good thing is you don't have to say it. I said it.
Councilor Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So great segue, Mike, into the ED 279 process. I wanted to, and I've said it before, and I may be the only one that reads Maine Town and City Magazine from Maine Municipal Association in October, November, and January. They had featured articles on that whole process. At the time it was created, it was probably good, but it's not dynamic, it's stagnant. And so the only thing I wanted to say is just my personal observation lately, watching the honor roll, the last names are very different from the last names I'm used to. When I grew up, it was Franco names, Franco-American names. Then I went through the Cambodian and the Vietnamese migration came in. Now the names are very different. I don't want to classify them in any way, just to say that they are different names. Same with Chisholwizzle. The executive board of that Chisholwizzle was a very different, the whole entire thing was different. What is sad for me is that funding is not dynamic enough to embrace the people coming, because we are an aging population. We need more people here. And so this influx of people coming quickly, that system just can adapt. And that's what I'm, that LD hopefully will address that. So thanks for testifying. The tough thing, and I think Council Mishu's hitting on it, is there's no room for any additional revenue anywhere to absorb that. It lies over underneath the dome, somewhere there, not here. And that was my question of you, because I've had people call me, not several, but some constituents, different ages, all concerned about the same thing, kind of wanting to know a little bit more about these people coming in that don't have English, what is it? What's the correct title?
Multilingual learners.
Bilingual learners.
Thank you.
And
There's
learn English
different
is-
titles that the ED 279 uses another title, which is probably old. And so that's why I asked you, are we reporting it? We're doing everything we can
Yes.
within the framework we have.
Yes, sir.
But nonetheless, there is a cost, and that cost has to be borne somewhere. It's unfortunate. So, when somebody said, well, they're lying about the funding, their assumption, I guess, senior politicians, is that they are providing 55% of an old formula. It's as if, I'm looking back and thinking I can get leaded gas. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
So it's the same thing. Thank you.
So let me ask a few questions, if I might. Let me follow up on this 55% question. If I've been following the news correctly, there's discussions going on at the State House now about revising that formula.
Correct.
Is any change in real prospect this year? It's not going to
Yeah.
help us this year, but might we be sitting here next year with a different formula?
Yes, there are prospects of help for next FY '28, not this coming budget that we're all working on tonight.
Right. But next year, when we're sitting here, we might have better news, or at least a different formula that we're operating under?
Yes, I think we will. I sit on the Kennebec Valley Superintendent's Legislative Committee, and I was just in a meeting this morning that it's being pushed on from the Ed Committee with almost all but two, not unanimous, but all but two votes to support that in the legislature. And what was surprising is it's not partisan. So there are both sides of the aisle supporting this bill. So I think everybody agrees fundamentally that, in every town, no matter what, right, that funding education at its appropriate level would be a good thing at the state level, and would if it's funded more at the state level, it takes all that tax burden off the locals. So yes, I think by this time next year, we would see, knocking on wood, more. There are a lot of factors in that funding formula, but yes, if the models hold true, we would have received $400,000 to $700,000 more this year on the models I've seen running on the FY '27 numbers. So if that holds, we'd see that kind of money in the FY '28 proposal.
Good. Got a couple other questions. When you talked about your 4 drivers that are, you referred to them as being embedded in each school's costs. So we've got half a dozen or 12 expenditure lines, but digging deeper into each school's cost budgets, when you say they're embedded in each school's costs, you're talking about the portion of there's a portion of transportation that's allocated to each school, and are those overall cost increases sorted out among all those schools?
I'm going to let the business manager explain that a little bit more.
So the multilingual learners are in each school. That cost is split amongst each school.
Because those follow the student, you're counting the
Correct.
students, okay?
Correct. Yep, most of the other, like transportation, the technology, those are in system-wide services. Those fall into system-wide services. And then, of course, special education's in the actual different schools as far as the way the city views the budget.
And of course, wages, equipment, all that kind of stuff is allocated per school.
Yes, yeah.
Do you have any large capital improvement projects that you're budgeting for in this coming year?
The Coney roof we've phased. I think that's the largest thing I can think of, is we've got like a 3 or 4 year plan to continue to repair the Coney roof. And we're
In year what?
We're in year 2 for that, I
two?
believe.
This is our last payment.
No, not Coney payment, but the Coney roof.
Oh,
Where John has,
yeah, right, yeah.
there's 3 or 4, and we're in year 2 of,
So you're setting that aside in sort of like a reserve account?
no,
No?
we're paying as we go. So
Oh,
if
they're
it's
working on the roof now?
120,000 for the roof, for this portion, that's embedded in this year's budget.
So they are working on the roof now?
Well, this summer.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yes, sir.
As you're going.
Yes, sir, yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
So you said earlier that the budget that you took to the school board, the board as a whole deemed it a little too conservative. And I think at your last budget meeting where you actually adopted your budget, items were added back in. Could you describe what those were, or what those are, and the reasons that, if you can say, the board wanted those put back in?
I think that our administrators here would have not wanted me to push to remove any of the positions that we ultimately removed.
Understood.
But, and the board agreed with that position. And so the board asked to put back 3 educational technician positions and a reintegration specialist high school teacher position. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So those were added back in from my presented budget to the board.
For a total cost of,
The total cost for adding the items back in was $391,678.
adding the what back in, the 3 ed techs?
Adding those positions back in, and then there were a couple other items we had to put back in due to audit telling us we needed to put them back in. So the total is $391,678.
And what does a reintegration specialist do?
That position is someone who works with, we have a freshman academy that we have students who might be at risk of dropping out or not motivated or maybe need some study skills or soft skills, as I call them. That position teaches those courses. They work with our social workers on students who might be at risk of dropping out. They may be the person who, when students have been suspended, they help reintegrate them back into the school. Am I missing something?
Suspension.
Truancy, they handle all of our
Seeing
truancy.
chronic absenteeism. She's monitoring their absenteeism rate because we are, at the percentage that I told you, we are required by the state to develop a attendance committee. And so she is part of that.
Is that through all grade levels?
Yes.
She's
She's at the high school.
high
but
school?
Moving, middle school, high school is where she's placed right now, but we're looking to see what
for the district.
the district.
And is that a new position or a position you've had in the past?
It's a position we've had.
So it's to retain it?
It was a retaining position and a position that was here actually pre-COVID. I want to make sure I mention that.
All right. So anybody reading the paper, listening to the news knows that a lot of other school districts are facing budget challenges as well, admittedly larger districts. But have you had conversations with these other districts and to kind of noodle with them and about how they intend to deal with their budget difficulties?
Not to the extent that I've heard their plans, other than sharing similar woes. We've been fortunate not to have to be in the 40 to 80 positions like our friends in Lewiston or Portland. A lot of my local counterparts are trying to retain as many positions as they can. I know that locally there are a handful of reductions, and budgets are anywhere between the 5-6% to some people at 20% increases. So, and then of course, the increase to the expense line doesn't always equate to the increase on what goes out to taxpayers. So that deviates based on the school departments. But most of our local counterparts are not having to have the major cuts like the Lewistons, the Portlands.
Two more questions for me, at least at this point. Tell me about the new school and what you have in your budget for next year that addresses the planning purposes for the new school.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a great segue plug for the new Farrington. As everybody knows, Huzzy is slated for retirement and the coming years and the next 2 to 3 years. And at this point, we've been working with the building committee and the architects to develop what looks like it's going to be a small addition off the front of Farrington. If you're looking at Farrington just to the right of the building in the front, and then 2 additions in the back that will allow us to close Huzzy and assume all those children into the new Farrington complex.
As well as the 3 and 4-year-olds and the early childhood special education services for those students as well.
Right, which is a question you asked. So we have spaces for that to occur. We haven't added anything to the budget for that purpose, but we are retaining current positions at Huzzy to be able to transition. We'll have the same number of students, so those staff likely will be transitioning to that new school site where we will have to hire a couple of teachers for the 3-year-olds. Like, there's no secrets around that. Transparently, some of those positions at current positions will have to be reconstructed into what the need is at that time. So we're trying to maintain the positions that we can, Mr. Mayor, so that we don't, I think you were at a building committee meeting and I asked the question. We want to maintain positions to the extent feasible because we have spaces allocated in that new building based on the current staffing and programs we have now. If we cut staff or programming, then you could risk reducing some of those spaces with the state funds.
The money in the budget for the.
Oh, how much money do we have in the budget? We have $250,000 in Board of Education line, or in the Board of Education line, thank you, for the new school construction project. And we budget that because we have to pay the architects, and all the pre-planning that's going on right now has to be paid currently by the school department before it goes to referendum. Once we go to referendum in November, and if it passes in Augusta, then that money would be paid back. Be reimbursed.
And with respect to the project itself, the goal is we're working towards a project that will be fully funded by the state of Maine and not by local taxpayers.
Correct, yes. So just like with the Coney project, and you see in your budget here where it says debt service, the bottom line there, that's money that we budget to pay the payment on Coney, but then we have money that comes in the ED 279 in that same amount that refunds us basically for paying. So I call it money in, money out, but it's money from the state that pays that bill. And we'll see that same line when Coney payment ceases, it'll become the new Farrington payment.
Councilor Sienkiewicz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One question that might be putting you on the spot, Superintendent Tracy. I like to look at our surrounding communities and see what's going on. And when I look at the state of Maine's website for the tuition rates for 25 and 26, I see that most of our surrounding communities have their tuition rates pretty significantly higher than the city of Augusta's school district does. They break it out into, I'm telling you things you know, they break it out into elementary and secondary. When I look at elementary, Vassalboro and Waterville are the only two that are lower than us by $200 per student at most. And in secondary, we are the lowest in our area. That tuition rate does not account for special education, correct?
That's
No, that does not. So I increased the rate that we charge students who require special education services that are tuition students. I think it was 2 years ago. to, I think it's $55 a day, because what you have to do is take the salary of the teacher and then what services they receive. We've only been really able to accept students who have minimal services because of our our programs that require a higher level of need for students in the what we've previously considered as functional skills. Those programs have been full, and we haven't been able to accept students into that program. So it's more students who require a little academic help.
So when I'm looking at this number, is it fair to say this is the cost to educate a student in Augusta in the classroom for the school year, a gen ed student?
That's what this, if you're looking at the state website, those are the set state rates for our city for tuition to Coney.
Right.
And that's supposed to cover a total cost of a tuition student here, yes.
Right. So at the elementary level, it's giving me $10,923.99. At the secondary level, we're looking at $11,624.80. The next closest secondary is Waterville at $12,815, so $1,000 per student higher. And elementary, like I said, Waterville and Vassalboro are slightly lower, and then Winslow's the next closest, just about, and then you jump by about $1,000.
I think they set the tuition rate based off what you actually spend.
What we show that we spend,
Right.
again,
Right, which is
according to the ED 279.
And with I'm sorry.
And your local share, too.
The tuition is a total amount that's coming in. So then if it costs us on average $14,000 per student, which is about our average in Augusta, plus, as Mr. Mishu said, it looks like it's 22,000. That's because of those additional costs for additional students that we might have a student that costs us much more than 22,000. That increases that average that he's talking about. So the average typically developing student would be around that 14,000 and change marker. So even the tuition rate is under what actually costs us to educate student. So the difference, of course, is picked up
by the locals.
by the locals.
And what I'm hearing is that the city in Augusta, we are already on the lower end of cost per student in our gen ed. This doesn't factor in transportation, so transportation costs are outside of that. Do multilingual learners factor in, or do they fall under special ed or another
They have
category?
their own multilingual students, 4-year-olds. We get additional funding. Student at a lower SIS level, there's monies that come in for students of poverty and special education. There are additional state allocations within the ED 279 funding formula that gives us more funding for those populations. However, it's never enough. That's what I keep saying. But
Well, and the other part is that, so if you have your EPS funding and then Augusta pays this much above the EPS, which is less than what Gardner or Halldale does, that's when your tuition rate gets set on. So we would look like, yes, we're spending less per student, but the locals are spending less on all of their students compared to those other cities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if I'm looking at Augusta's per student, I'm looking at Hollowell's per student, which is 13,000. That is including what they've opted in to pay above the EPS formula?
Correct.
So in the city of Augusta, what we have decided to pay for our students is significantly lower than many of our surrounding communities already. And one of the things that I think is important to note that I think we've talked about tonight is that we are a service center. And so when I'm looking at these numbers, I'm also understanding that Winthrop and Hallowell and Chelsea probably don't have the MLL population, the SPED population that we do, because we are a service center. And so we have people who need services who live here. We also benefit, as Councillor Lind eloquently said, by the diversity that happens here. We have a really great city that's made up of people with a variety of strengths and weaknesses. But I think one of the things that stands out to me when I think about what I am considering in this budget season is that we are already at the lower end of what we are spending per student in the city of Augusta. And we want an excellent education in the city of Augusta. We want people to come here, to raise their families here, to know that their kids are getting the best education that they can. And so looking at these numbers helps me understand that we are not at an extravagant level at this point in time.
I would agree to that statement.
Thank you.
Counselor Lind and then Counselor Lilly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So your target of opportunity, I guess, Mike, I'll ask you this question. As Councilor Sinkowitz was talking about different towns, anecdotally, I've heard, and it's a compliment to the Augusta school system, that people have moved out of Augusta, maintain an address here, kids still going to school here. Do you verify, or is there a way to verify that someone, let's say they moved to Waterville as an example, but yet perhaps their grandparents live here and they're maintaining that as their address? Is there a way to drill down to that? I've heard it a couple times over the last few years, and again, it's anecdotal. Someone will say, you know, it's a great school, but you know, I'm moving out, but I'm going to maintain my address there.
I would say, trying not to be too flippant, that we're not the Augusta Police Department. So we don't
completely understand. I just don't know if there's a process that works.
Yes, seriously.
All right.
When we have indications that that might be the case, we have our wonderful SROs, and they actually, the RISP position, reintegration specialist, or sometimes a school counselor, will go with the SRO to go do a home visit to check on an address.
Okay.
And we have done that before. Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Lilly.
Thank you. Talked about the addition for the Farrington School and talking about Hussey School. What are we thinking for the closure of the school? What's going to happen with the property when it closes?
Oh, what are we going to do with the Hussey School?
Yes.
It would be premature for me to say. I always say our school buildings are really city buildings. So I think the school board would have to work with the city council at that time to determine what's the best use of that building. If the school department has a use for it, we would petition them to the city and say, this is what we'd like to use the school for at that time. Or if there's not a use for it, or we don't think it's feasible to keep it open for another purpose, we would look to the city to mutually figure out what to do with that.
Is there any money that's being set aside for the closure of the school?
There's money in the budget for the for the addition at Farrington,
Correct.
but not any money set aside for school closure per se.
Looking at the handout that you presented with us here, look at the three top amount changes. If we look at the citywide services section, the 36.63%, from what I gathered, that mostly is the IT increase with also the special education increasing as well,
Special ed transportation.
specifically the transportation.
Sir.
And then if we look at the next one, we look at the superintendent's office with a 15.83. Where are we seeing pretty significant increase for that?
Can you tell me what the specifics are for that?
So most of that are, of course, salary, fringe benefits, retirement. And then the regional service center costs that we joined this year, but we don't have to pay the membership fee until fiscal year 27. And what? Seed money in that? No, there's no seed money.
Looking at the, can we call it the RSC? Is that fine to say?
Yes.
If we look at the RSC, what are the benefits that we're specifically seeing for that here in Augusta? Seems like a pretty significant cost.
Yeah, it's a cost, but, and you may have missed that I said the revenue component on that to join that regional service center is about $110,000.
Okay.
That we get in. So we spend 30, we get 110.
Is that 110 included in this part of the superintendent's office?
It's included in all the revenues.
Okay, so it's showing the increase here, but it doesn't show the positive?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And
But
then if-
there are tangential benefits
Understood.
from actually, it wasn't just a let's join it for the money.
Oh, I understand.
But there are benefits. I can explain those or just
That's fine for now.
Okay.
Looking at the last one, the 9.24 for CATC, that one again just seems like a little bit of an outlier compared to the rest of the learning centers.
Sure, we added a program. We're proud to say that one of the board's priorities this year was expanding programs into 9th and 10th grade. So we were able to do that with the Tech Center for next year. It's an exploratory program, which will mean new materials, a new instructor. Those are costs. Again, on the cost side, we will, on the revenue side, the Tech Center receives some money for opening that program as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council Mission.
I don't ask technical questions. I just look at the bottom line, and I suppose I'm going to tip my hat here a little bit. 37% in the last, with this proposed budget since 2024. Cost of living goes up about 3% a year. That's quite a bit more. You said that the average Augusta citizen makes 5% more than everybody else, and that was in 2006. I think it's time for a reassessment of that as well. I have received, and I only speak for myself, mind you, I have received many texts, emails, and phone calls from folks that are absolutely scared to death of the revaluation. And the revaluation is not a tax increase. It is a readjustment of taxes. And everybody thinks, or a lot of people are assuming that their taxes are going to go up, when we know that some will, some won't, some will stay the same. And asking the taxpayers, I'm going to give this to every department, so I don't want to think that I'm picking on the school department, because the school department, the children are our future, and I have a vested interest in making sure that happens. But we have to live within our means, and I just don't know. My phone's been buzzing all night, so I just don't know where we're going to come up with $3.7 million to ask the taxpayers to pay. I think it's going to be a stretch. The school board chair says, well, they pass the school budget every year. That's an assumption that will happen this year, and that's only going to be based on what the council allots the school department. And again, I don't want to cut anything. I want the children in Augusta to have the best education they can, but I represent everybody in Augusta as well as does everybody at this board. So again, I am going to have a hard time as wrapping my head around $3.7 million, and I'm just being perfectly honest with you. So we'll see where that goes, because I have 7 other members that may just completely disagree with me, and so be it. But I appreciate the budget. I really do, and the hard work that goes into it. And, again, I have to analyze every little bit of it, and I'm not going to be any easier on any other department within the city, because, we set a goal coming into this budget season to have a flat budget, so the people in the city of Augusta know where their taxes are going to be without a tax increase. It's a sticky wicket, and we're stuck right in the middle of it. So again, we'll see what happens, but I'm just sharing my thoughts and views. But thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll see you folks again.
Council Lind?
I just want to make sure, Mike, are we done with your presentation, or?
I would hope, Mr. Mayor, we could get some direction so the board would know how to respond, if at all, because if you'd like us to come back, we would need to know what to do from here.
Yeah, let's.
Yep, I just want to make sure the timing was right, that's all, Mike. So, for me, this is my 9th municipal budget, and the toughest part of it all, believe it or not, with everything we go through with the city, we have several other meetings, is the school budget. And I say that for two reasons. First, it's probably the most serious one in my mind, and I don't mean to diminish the municipal side. Both my boys received great education from the Augusta school system. I'm a Hussey School alum myself. There are friends in this room I've known for 30 years that work for the school department. My neighbor is sitting right there. So as I go through this, please understand that my role here is different than perhaps my role on Purrington Avenue, or my role walking around the neighborhood or sitting in Chisel Whistle. I just want to go through some history, some numbers. I'm going to try to be as pragmatic, as direct, and as objective as possible. And I'll say it up front, and I'll say it at the end. I am deeply, deeply concerned about the economy. I am deeply concerned about the war. I heard a quote today: poor people watch the gas price, rich people watch the stock market, and neither one is doing well right now. So, that being said, I just want to go through some recent history. My numbers are probably a little more refined than Council Mishu's. I did a little bit of work today. But again, I'm a Hussey alum, so bear with me. There's two of us at this table.
Three.
The property tax, three, thank you.
Four of us.
Four, all right.
Five.
Have a party later at Hussey School. So the property tax funding dedicated to school, this is what is asked of our taxpayers. And I went back to FY '24. It was $14,058,000. I'm not going to get into the hundreds. That rose in FY '25 to $15,583,000. That was a 10.85% increase. FY '26, it jumped up to $18,869,000. That was a 21.09% increase. The current proposal at $22,106,000 is a 17.1% increase. Cumulatively, since FY '24, that's a 57.27% increase. That's the burden on the taxpayers to support the school system. The budget, the overall school budget, and if my numbers are wrong, Mike, correct me later, FY '24, $36,262,000. FY '25, $38,781,000, an increase of 6.94%. FY '26, it jumped up to $41,259,000. That was an increase of 6.39%. And this year, it's up to, your proposal is up to $45,010,000 for an increase of 9.09, cumulative increase of 24.12%. Now, inflation, and this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, doesn't run at the same fiscal year we do. So I just took 24, 25, and 26. 24 is at 2.9, 25, 2.7, and to date, and that's February, is 2.4%, and I'm going to submit, I'm sure that will change. The cumulative is 8.24. So to wrap it up, from a cumulative perspective from FY '24, the property tax request to support the school system has increased 57.27%. The budget, 24.12. Inflation's at about 8.24. So, when you take a step back, the growth in school funding, the need, the ask from property taxes is really significantly outpacing inflation. Meanwhile, personal income growth in Maine, and this is in Maine, not in Kennebec County, is generally about 2 to 3% per year. So then that, for me, that begs the question, how can we ask the taxpayers to absorb property tax increases that dramatically exceed their own financial growth? That's the challenge that's sitting before us, and that's my role and responsibility as a council, is to take that all into account. So in conclusion, with all deep respect, I'm just going to ask you go back, and and Councilor Mishu touched on it a little bit. We have all discussed zero, trying to get to zero, and the reason for that is there's more than one reason. When we do this reevaluation, there's going to be a property tax shift. The commercial is going to shift to the residential. That's going to be an increase there. I think that trajectory is really unsustainable at this point. Kennebec County, you've heard me talk once, if not 100 times, about Alice, and I do appreciate very much the school department embraced Alice and embraced the United Way goals. 28% of our households in Kennebec County cannot make ends meet. Right now, 12% live in poverty. And again, like I said earlier, gas is at $4 a gallon. And I would submit, and it's my opinion only, sitting here, that our supply chain is going to be interrupted by what is going on in the Middle East. And if you remember the pandemic, that immediate impact didn't hit. It took months to hit. So I'm deeply concerned. We are trying to grow the city. We're trying to develop economic growth. We can't do that if our taxes continue to go up. Businesses won't see us as attractive. Same holds for the school. If the schools are running well, same thing. So that's the challenge. I want to acknowledge the difficult work you're doing and what you've done in the past. I have tremendous faith in you, Mike, and your entire team. I've seen it. I witnessed it. In March of 2025. Remember the headline: $3 million error. You guys dealt with that. I've heard year after year about the deep concerns about cuts, but again, we see cuts. So when challenged, you guys rise to the challenge. So I'm going to ask that you use your collective knowledge. I know people on the staff are deeply concerned about their kids, but they are equally qualified. So for me, I'd like to drive to zero. I want to see a different budget presented that won't impact the taxpayers. I'm going to be talking to the city manager to my left the same way. I am really concerned about the impact of the economy on our taxpayers, on all of us, and on the city. So I'm not in supportive of what you presented. Doesn't mean I don't respect your work, doesn't mean I don't respect your staff. And the school board, like us, are elected officials. They go through it, and I respect all of them. But my role here is different, and I'm protective of the people I represent, and I think I'm going to ask you drive to zero, try to come back with something better than less, and I don't want to use the word better, less impactful than what is presented. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Morris-Polling.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Eric. Those are some good numbers. I think my concern is that I know we sit here and we talk about, is there any funding that can help the school? And from my perspective, there are state and federal funds that can help this school, and it can help our kids that we're serving here. It can be beneficial to our absentee, to our dropout rate, to the kids that are out of placement right now. And I don't see that we're really putting in that energy that I'd like to have seen this past year, that we spoke about last year. I do hope that maybe the school the expansion of the school at Farrington might have some room, because that seemed to be the challenge last year, is that there wasn't any room. And so now here we're building a new school, and now we've got that doesn't seem to be the challenge anymore. So that's a concern for me. One of the things that kind of brought it home to me was in our packet, it talked about the total households here in Augusta of 9,453, and that as the municipality must consider the dynamics of household types to plan for and provide services effectively. And when we look at the statistics for Augusta, family households are 36% lower than the state average here in Augusta, but our seniors living alone are 42% higher than the state average. And we know when we're looking at seniors who are living alone, we're looking at those that are on fixed incomes. And so when we're talking about increasing budgets, I think that those are the individuals that we have some sort of responsibility to take into account and look at. So it is I think that you have difficult work. I think that the children here in Augusta have a great team behind them, but I think there's more that we can do to help support them and also support the budget that we haven't explored enough of. And so I think that needs to be explored. And in the meantime, I think that the budget needs to come down a little bit in response to not having explored as much as we can that area. So that's kind of where I stand right now. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, Mayor.
Would you, I don't want to just sit here and grin and smile at you. I'd like you to maybe provide me that information. Would you email me because I don't know what you're talking about resources and funding beyond what we've explored. And not to say that doesn't exist, because I think you're saying it does. So would you be willing to send that to me?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Gary Allen.
Jared, would you be able to tell me what get to zero means? How much money do we have to cut?
Yeah, I'm listening to the get to zero. So you got to remember at the top of the hour, couple hours, I indicated that, if you look at your expenditures and revenues on both sides, okay, the revenues are down because of the fund balance. So getting to zero also means making up for the revenues that are deficient. So you're talking, if you look at your tax rate sheet, it's simply,
What page are we looking at, Jared?
Haley, can you bring the
22.
Appendix A back up?
22.
Okay. So one of the things I'm very excited is that this budget has pages
That's
on
right.
it. I literally called Jared at what felt like midnight to be like, Jared, there are pages in this budget. Thank you.
So looking up, at the top, you're talking about, a reduction of 2.508029 million in expenditures. For the municipal side, the reduction of 3.7 in the education, we would have to make up for the county increase, another 348,000. And then when you go down to revenues, we would have to make up that 2.5 minus the 513, so 2.086. So
For a
if you
total
want,
of about 8.7 million?
correct, you're talking about, to get back to where we were last year and just have, no increase would be a fire department, a police department,
An entire fire department? Oh, okay.
yeah.
I'm
So-
just
on
wondering
the-
what we're talking about here.
On the city side, I'm saying, I mean, that doesn't include what the school would cut either, but for our side, it's very, very significant.
Yeah, we've run the numbers to get to zero. We're talking 50 to 60 positions on the school side. So
I literally can't breathe
I
right
don't know, I
now.
don't know what that would look like. I'm just saying we ran numbers and so.
So totality of to get everybody,
On our
like
side.
collectively to get to zero.
Right, we would presumably split that, so it'd be 4 million in change apiece. And it's easy if you look at the, the.
3.7 million on my side.
3.7, okay, yeah, so I'm just putting into perspective, we could take cuts across the board and.
Yeah.
But
But
I'm
this
just,
is big money.
yes,
Okay.
it'd be significant, but I can give you those.
So the reason why I'm asking is because I'm just trying to prepare us for a real conversation about what it means to get to zero, because every year we start here in this conversation where we all have these grand ideas about getting to zero, and I'm one of them too, right? I'm like, let's get to zero. It feels great. I don't want to pay taxes. I actually particularly don't like taxes. I'm actually quite conservative when it comes to tax money. But when we get to like the real numbers, getting to zero means closing a police department. Getting to zero means not having fire department.
And if I may, I'm saying if you just, that number.
Right,
That's
I
their
understand.
budget.
Like the idea-
You could do cuts across, slight cuts across each one, so I don't want to.
To be clear, we are not closing a fire department, we're not closing a police department, but that type of money that we're talking about is like a whole department's budget. So getting to zero has a deep impact across the entire organization. And the last time I came to this council's table at the end of our budget with a get to zero budget, you all looked at me like I had 17 heads because it was a ridiculous proposal. And I did it on purpose. I came to you and I said, let's cut I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was literally ridiculous because I came in with that proposal because I knew nobody was going to bite on it, right? And we can't start from arguing or debating a budget based on complete irrational arguments. If we're going to have a rational conversation about this, let's take a deep breath. Maybe we're not getting to zero. I'm not prepared to talk about getting to zero until I've heard from every department. I'm not prepared to talk about getting to 1% or 7% or 12% or whatever number we think we're going to get to each year until we've had the conversation. We haven't even had the conversation yet. So that's my rant for tonight. Thank you.
Counselor Sienkiewicz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, respectfully to Counselor Lind, I don't remember agreeing to the get to zero. You said that everybody was talked about, and that, to me, with how many variables we have moving in our evaluation, I can't have that as my guiding goal, because every year the valuation shifts because we have development in the city of Augusta. We've been in a position of having development come in, and therefore 0 is a moving target because there is more valuation to absorb the growth of the municipal and school budgets. Given that we're in the middle of the reval, I understand the desire to only see the effect of the reval. However, I am not willing to have the cost of all the good of the municipal and school budgets given over in the desire to just see the impact of the reval. So when I'm looking at that, there is a good goal in only seeing the impact of the reval, and there are good goals in the municipal and school budgets. And I don't think that my orientation throughout this budget process will not be giving up these in order just to see the impact of the reval, especially because we cannot control the reval and we won't know the impact until July. And so I have to make do with what I have here in front of me, and I have to make the best decisions that I can about what the city needs without knowing exactly what that math works out to be until July. We know that some of the valuation change here, most of it is the reval. Some of it is development. And if this were an ordinary year, that development would absorb some of the growth in the needs from the school and the city. And so if we are only getting to last year's budget, then we are cutting from both the school and the city, because a dollar isn't a dollar. A 2026 dollar is not a 2025 dollar. And my goal here is to balance the true needs that are being brought to us from our departments with the lowest impact to our residents possible. And so 0 doesn't really factor in for me at all. What I'm seeing here is a department that we have pushed and pushed and pushed to the point where there was no fund balance last year, where we're just barely getting a fund balance back this year. And we intentionally took on the fund balance cliff last year. This 2.5 million is not a surprise to me. We chose that last year on the city side. We said, our fund balance is getting too big. We need to use that, spend it down to a healthy amount, which is where we're at now. And we knew, like City Manager Mills said, we hoped we'd be in a better position this year, but the economy is what the economy is. So we made that choice. We're sticking with that choice on the city side. On the school side, there are costs to education that are rising exponentially. And I think everybody around this table has talked about that in some way, shape, or form tonight. There are aspects of this that are felt differently depending on where you live. And that rate of change is going to look different here than it does in some of our surrounding communities compared to Portland. We are not looking at a 20% increase like Portland. There's always someone worse off than you. At this point, I have listened to every budget meeting. I have heard what's on the table next if we ask you to go back and do cuts, and that is the reintegration specialist. That is the person that helps people not drop out of school, that helps that absenteeism. It is the 3 elementary ed techs that help support students so that we don't, 1, have to hire more teachers, or 2, have those students end up in special ed, right? They support kids that need a little bit of extra help. I see it every day in my kids' classrooms. My kindergartner is in a classroom of 16 students. 16 5- and 6-year-olds is not an obscene number, but it is an obscene number to manage. I can't fathom how my daughter's teacher would do it without the ed tech that's in that classroom. So, at this point, having listened to the entire budget go forward, I don't know how you cut this budget. And if those are the 4 things that are starting to be cut, that is not a cut that I am willing to ask you to make. I am one counselor, I am not the entire council. But I don't want to balance this budget on the backs of the kids who need it the most, and that's where we're at. So my vote would be to move forward, see where we're at with our other departments, see how this plays out a little bit more, because I know what you're going to bring back, and that is not a good direction for the city of Augusta's education. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else at this time? Counselor Judkins?
Education is so important. It's like the cornerstone of what the future of our city is going to look like, what we're building. We have to balance that with what the community can afford to spend. As much as our hearts would be, well, let's give them Mercedes-Benz, but all we can afford is a Chevy. It is what it is, and I'm sorry about that. But we have to look at every citizen, every need, not just kids. That's our job. I would want to refute at least a little bit of the information that it sounds like some data that was presented that Augusta goes on the cheap, that we spend less for our kids than anybody else does around us, that proves this is an extravagant budget. And nobody said it was an extravagant budget. But truth be told, the new ask, I mean, the state has another number, and it's what's required for the local community to contribute in order for you to get state funding. That's what they consider a baseline to be. We have always provided a greater amount of money than what the state baseline was. And even if we go with the new 14 million, I think it's $120,000 is what the new required is. And the get to zero for just the school would be flat funding from last year, which is 18,869,000. We are still paying greater than 30% above what the state says we have to. We're not doing this on the cheap. We're not shorting the kids. We're well above. So I just want to finish with that. Thank you.
Anyone else want to weigh in at this time? Counselor Sinkwitz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Superintendent Tracy or Assistant Superintendent Thibodeau, do you know if any municipality in the state only funds at EPS levels?
There are a handful, but I'm not exactly sure which ones those are. There are groups that are called minimum receivers.
Yes.
Falmouth, Cumberland, there's a few more well-to-do communities that get a minimum state aid, and there are a handful of that. Those would be considered operating at EPS, but they're funding locally at a much higher rate, but they're not taking more state aid than what would be considered the minimum. So I don't have those off the top of my head, but there's just a very few that operate just at a state minimum.
Right. So it's common for municipalities to contribute more than the basic requirement.
Yes.
Just to add to that, Superintendent Tracy, because a school is a minimum receiver doesn't mean they're not raising considerable amounts locally to subsidize that.
Right.
So it's not that they're spending less on education, the state's giving them less, but those communities are raising a considerable amount more.
Right.
And the state tuition numbers are EPS plus the local contribution above and beyond EPS.
Say that one more.
The state tuition numbers on the website, the 25-26 tuition rates are EPS plus what the municipality has decided to spend
To give a
beyond.
full budget.
It's the
Yes.
full budget, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Counselor Lind?
So to answer that question, Mike, I'm going to go back to the articles in the Maine Municipal Magazine. Over 40% of Maine's 252 school districts have one or more communities that are minimum receivers under the EPS formula. So that's the answer. 40% over 40% of the school districts, the 252 school districts, have one or more communities and a minimum receivers. It doesn't give context to size. That's what I had read, and I knew there was some. Not a lot, but there are some.
Yeah, we may be talking about two different things, but yeah, minimum receivers are the wealthier communities that don't, that show their valuation is superior to Augusta's, so they're receiving minimum state subsidy. What I think Counselor Sinkowitz is talking about is those communities that are just at minimum base level of EPS funding. And just anecdotally, when I was RSU 74 superintendent, we were at like 28% over EPS when we were like 10 to 14% above EPS in Augusta. What I found is my counterparts who had less students in their districts spend more per pupil because of the economy of scale, economy of size. So in Augusta, we have more kids. I find where there are more kids, you can, if you're running efficiently, you can spend less per pupil because there are more kids. In those rural places where there are less children, to have even a semblance of an educational program, you're spending more per pupil.
Counselor Judkins?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm not really sure of the relevancy of this particular question, because no one here has suggested that we would be a minimum receiver, that we're only talking 14 million. The statement was we are doing 30% above that. So maybe a better question would be how many communities in the state of Maine are doing 30% or greater than what the minimum required is. That would be a more fair question.
So
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I can find it out.
But we're not 30% above EPS either.
No, we're not.
We're at what we funded last year is 30%, a little over 30% greater than what
I think it's
the local ask is this year.
30% over the local required.
Yes,
It
that's
does-
what I was discussing.
That's what you're saying, which is different than 30% over EPS. You're talking about two different things.
There's two different conversations happening.
Yes.
So before we conclude tonight, one question I always like to ask is, or at least give you an opportunity to end on a more positive note, and if there's anything you would like to share about the school district that's been particularly good or noteworthy this past year, some, like a good news turn.
I would love that opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things I spoke with the board about, and maybe you saw this, was good enough isn't good enough for me. And what I mean by that is we're going to do more with less. I think Councilor Lynn said he was pleased with watching the resilience of the staff and what we're able to do. And we recognize the situation you're in, and I'm glad it's you at the table making the decisions, and I just get to prepare a budget, and you actually have to decide on it. So thank you, and I respect your work. I'm proud to say we have an innovation center. Caitlin Rodriguez, our IT director, has got a fabulous spot with 3D printers going on, seventh grade students crawling around on the ground with robots. It's really a neat thing to watch. That's going on. We've done that on a shoestring. Grants, good job. We've got a new remote academy we started last year at the high school. The high school teachers and principal came up with a model that really looks at every department and how can we work with kids who may have struggled to get to school or find other ways to have a multiple pathway for a kid to be able to take a particular class in any one of the content areas. That's new and innovative and exciting that they do that. We brought a alternative education program to life a few years ago with a partnership with the Teen Center. So we have multiple programs going on with the Teen Center for various reasons. So those are just three things off the top of my head that we've been working on. We're not done exploring some regional partnerships with regard to special ed. I'm not letting my foot off the gas on that conversation. So I'm happy to report that regardless of the ability, the funding that we will be able to work with, we'll work with what you folks are able to provide, and we will respect that. But we will continue to work diligently to be creative and innovative with these programs. So I'm delighted with the work of our staff. We've got an amazing staff, an amazing administrative team, a wonderful school board that's supportive. So I'll end on that note. Thank you for your time and your investment in your schools, that we get to just operate and ensure that your children and the children of this community have the best places they can go to school. So thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Lynn?
I do want to provide a compliment, Mike. When I went to Chisholm, I braced myself a little bit when I went in the building. To put some perspective on that, my oldest son was the last class to graduate from the old high school. My youngest son was the first to graduate after 4 years in the new school. And time flies by. And so when I went to Chisholm, I reflected that was 20 years ago. So I went in the building and kind of braced myself thinking, I'm going to see some damage. The building's in terrific shape.
Yes.
The athletic facilities we have, thanks to Mr. Fuller, God bless him, are great. The cross-country trails that I was a part of 30 years ago are great. The facilities, we talk about the kids, but the facilities, you've been great stewards, I want to say that, and I'm sure on a shoestring. I'm sure there's not a lot of money there, and that's a piece that we seem to forget about, but can really come up and hit you pretty hard. So for that, I want to say thank you to whoever was involved with that. I was there then, very actively involved in the school and all of that. I kind of walked away, new chapter of my life, but as I stepped back in, I was extremely proud of how well everything looked, and everything was, I didn't inspect the boiler room, but, anecdotally, cursory, it looked great. The facilities are fantastic.
Thank you. That's a tip to Mr. Stonier, does a fantastic job for us, so thank you. We'll let him know.
So I want to thank you and your team for bringing your budget forward and spending the time with us tonight. At one point in my career, I was where you were, so I know what it's like to come before council. And I always thought one of the most difficult parts about being on the school board is that you don't really have control over your budget. I mean, you know what you think you need and what you want, but in the end, it's out of your control. So I can understand how it's frustrating, can be frustrating at times. I don't know that you're walking away with the clarity that you might have wished for tonight, but to be fair, this is our very first night. Hard for us to come to some overall conclusions without knowing, all the implications of all the other budgets. But I think it's a sobering year. I think it's fair to say that. So keep tabs on what we're doing, and I would fully anticipate there'd be another opportunity to come back, or at least a joint conference committee or some combination of the two. We're far from done, just getting started. Anything you want to say?
No, and I would just add the superintendent and I meet regularly. I think we have a meeting this Thursday, 2 days. So I will keep him apprised of your work and our work moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Madam Chair, anything else?
No, I just wanted to say that the staff is our strength. We have a wonderful staff, and like Smith said tonight, they keep doing more with less. I just wonder how much we can push them to do that. And one thing that I'm really proud of is the amount of activities that we provide for kids after school. I know there's, and these are the teachers that volunteer their time. They're not a certified club yet, but yet they find activities for the kids to do. We have a Girls on the Run team at Farrington. We have a Lego team. And these kind of activities are where our teachers just go above and beyond, and our staff just goes above and beyond. And I couldn't be prouder of them. And I just want to stress one thing that was said when we made the attempt and brought programs back. This makes me the saddest, is that we've had teachers injured, but still they come to school and still they do their best. So I can't say enough about the staff that our kids have at the Augusta Schools Department, and I want to make sure that they're all recognized and thanked for that. So thank you.
Thank you for doing that. All right, we'll excuse you folks. We're done with our group tonight. This is the only department we were going to be talking about tonight. I do want to let people know and remind all of you that our next budget workshop will be this coming Thursday, the day after tomorrow. It'll be preceding our regular business meeting. So we'll be getting together at 5:30 here in this room. And we will be hearing about the police department, the legislative and executive lines, human resources, and IT. Anything else before we break? All right. Thank you for your participation tonight. We're finished for tonight, and we'll see you Thursday.